Hello and welcome to the Film Angle. I'm Alex,
And I'm Kris.
and today, just when I thought I was out, they dragged me back in. We are back in the world of Marvel. It's been a weird year for Marvel. I think they've had a few
Yeah.
duds. Uh, never awful though. Maybe I don't know. My feelings on Love and Thunder have probably gotten worse since our uh,
Yeah. It's the
review.
opposite to fine wine, isn't it?
Yeah, the more you think about it, the more you're like, "Oh god, that really was a miss."
Yeah.
And we kind of have spoken about getting bored by superhero films. Yet, as we mentioned last week, we like to keep talking about them, and I do think it is because these films are almost like TV episodes now, aren't they?
So they're
They
sewn
fit
into the
into a
fabric
world.
of yeah. No, they're just sewn into the fabric of our everyday lives now, aren't they? I mean, it's we're constantly anticipating, we're constantly, reflecting on superhero movies, and they just kind of reflect where we are. It's kind of it's interesting. It's just something that everybody's growing up with and living with, and it's
Well, I think like for us in the podcast world, it creates so many talking points, and obviously you can talk about other films that are standalone in the same way, but it's just there's those added elements of like you're talking about not just a film, you're talking about what's come before it, how it fits
yeah.
into a universe, and then you're also talking about like the anticipation of what comes next, and it isn't really films in those ways, and there's Scorsese very much had a point. They are just theme park rides now. Like you're
Mm.
getting your next hit of Marvel adrenaline and carrying on. That being said, talking about getting bored and all that kind of stuff, I really, really, really enjoyed Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. What about you, Kris?
I appreciated it. I found there was moments of real, genuine inspiration peppered throughout this movie, but ultimately, I thought it was sort of a mid tier Marvel film. I found things that took me out frequently, but we'll get into those, I suppose. But I think this is fascinating what you were saying. Usually, regardless of what's happening around the world, we're going to get the same movie that was always conceptualized from the beginning. But what had going for this movie, which is tragically very interesting, is obviously the passing of Chadwick Boseman. How that actually, I'm not a big expert on the comic books as we've sort of previously discussed, but it is probably interesting how that directly affects the whole story going forward. How it completely rewrites the narrative. That is something that is being as answering something that's social that's going on in popular culture and going on in someone's real life, and whether it's like we're living in an alternative universe, just like one of these Marvel multiverse movies. We're getting another movie that we probably weren't supposed to get, which I find fascinating in of itself.
Definitely, definitely. And before we go forward with this, it's worth saying it'll be on the description, it'll be in the title. We're going full spoilers straight from the get go. And as Kris mentioned, this film had to deal with the death of Chadwick Boseman. And how do you go ahead with that? It literally was delayed for 2 months, I think. I think
Hmm.
before the sad passing of Chadwick Boseman, they were weeks away from starting production on the film. He fully expected to be there. I don't think he knew he was fighting this illness and he knew it wasn't great, but I don't think he expected to miss Wakanda Forever.
Hmm.
And then Marvel had to have this very difficult decision of do they recast? Do they not make the film? Do they move forward? And I do think that the Black Panther series, as we've seen so far, is kind of benefits from having a really, really strong supporting cast, and it kind of
100%.
helps the fact that they could move forward with this character. I don't think maybe in a hypothetical situation, had Chris Hemsworth died after Thor 1, I don't think you would have moved forward with the Thor films or you would have recast. I don't think there would be any situation where you, you take the supporting cast of Thor. I know Loki was great, but I don't think you
Yeah.
would have carried on in the
I'm,
same way
I'm
that they would here.
And plus, Marvel was at an early enough stage back then where it would have been at least acceptable to have recast somebody. But I think Chadwick Boseman really just kind of put his stamp on the character of T'Challa as Black Panther, to the point where it would just be the wrong choice to replace. He was irreplaceable, and it is a big void that I feel like this movie is missing. He is a shadow over this film in a very honoring way, but I do feel like it missed him.
Okay, okay. From what I've heard, they didn't have to rewrite the film majorly. Like the basic storyline of
Hmm.
Namor and Wakanda, and the kind of war between those two is very much still the same. But probably some character roles got switched, and different things got changed around a bit. But from what I've heard, it wasn't a top to bottom rewrite. It was just very much a bit of a rejig, and you can kind
Hmm.
of see that because Boseman's death is kind of um, it it has its impact on the film, but it's very much at the start and the end where it really really matters. I think, and they have a very kind of touching beginning 5 to 10 minutes where Shuri is trying
Yes.
to recreate the heart shaped herb in an attempt to kind of with T'Challa's DNA in an attempt to kind of save him from an unnamed illness. So they've kind of tied it quite close to home.
Yeah, and that scene I thought really was a great opening scene that really kind of threw you into the moment.
Mm,
Really interesting way to deal with it. I actually haven't seen a Marvel film really start off that way. It really throws you into a really intense moment, and I thought it was a very fascinating way to deal with it. And then obviously transitioning into the funeral ceremony, it was a very beautiful way to start the film, and didn't dwell too much or glorify or swim in the waters of it too much. It was just the right thing to do. I find it quite captivating and a great way to start the movie off.
definitely, and I think the use of silence in the opening Marvel logo
Yeah.
shot with the many visuals of Chadwick Boseman kind of creating the logo was like a really kind of unique way to tribute him. And I think any moment, even near the end, they have a few flashbacks to him as well, and they're all given with this absolute silence. And I think is quite touching and a very mature way to kind of
Mm,
uh, you know
100%. And it really pulls
tribute
the
his
rug underneath
performance.
you. Doesn't it really pull the rug beneath you whenever you see that Marvel sequence at the start? It's like it really was an unexpected surprise. And we were in a pretty packed IMAX cinema screen for this, and you could hear a pin drop. Actually, I felt almost compelled, and I haven't actually felt this in a screen for like years. I felt compelled to clap. It just because I felt like I just felt like I felt moved by that. And if only we weren't living in the Great British Isles where everybody wasn't so self conscious of themselves, I think everybody else would have wanted it too. But that was not a risk I was willing to take. But I was so close to feeling compelled to give a clap and a cheer because it was beautiful and it really took me by surprise.
Mm.
Yeah, what a way to start the movie.
But yeah, I mean, apart from that kind of opening, I do think they very much go years past. Obviously, these characters are dealing with the grief, but they're very good at kind of saying, "All right, we're still a Marvel film. We're still a film aimed at kids and young adults, and like we can't just make you cry all the time." Even though there were many times I kind of welled up during this film, and it takes you straight back in. Um, Wakanda has opened itself up to the world, but that has only created more kind of um, controversy over who gets to use vibranium and why can't we have
Yeah.
vibranium, and Wakanda saying no, get lost, you guys are idiots and you're going to use it for the worst. Um,
Yes.
it was kind of interesting. I thought that the U.S. government are very much the villains in this film. I know Namor is a villain as
100%.
well, but he's kind of more he's more of a problem that needs solving, whereas the overarching thing is like America is gonna,
Yeah. Yeah,
the states
they're
are trying to get their hands on things.
Yeah, which is completely like at odds to what Phase One Marvel was like, where it was so pro America, military. It was all that sort of Transformer-esque Michael Bay imagery was kind of laced throughout those first sort of Iron Man, Thor movies. And now it's really kind of self-reflecting. We've got these American filmmakers, and they're basically acknowledging, yeah, if we had this thing, we'd be pretty shitty with it. And it's completely, yeah, it's not, it's definitely demonizing the US, but it is a very fascinating opening scene. But yeah, I guess with such a powerful resource like that on the planet, that sort of conversation from the first movie is going to carry on. People are going to be greedy over it, and there is some interesting political interplays that kind of you can take that in, and that's kind of going on in this movie as well as the main plot. Yeah, I don't know if that stuff is handled just as well as the kind of adventures of Shuri and Nakaya, but yeah, it's still interesting commentary to have in these movies. I like it when they push those agendas forward.
Definitely. I think as well, there was a lot of kind of political nature to the first Black Panther film, and it came out at a time where I think we were 2 years into the Trump administration, and it was a film very much about like, shall we open borders? Shall we kind of help people with
Mm-hmm.
our resources? And it was in a time when, you had Brexit, you had Trump, and you had countries kind of very much kind of closing in on themselves and not being as kind of globalistic as they once were. And
Sure.
I thought it was a kind of really interesting political element to that first film, which really kind of made me love it even more.
Mm.
And I think there's more here again, but they definitely double down on the kind of fantasy elements this time as we get to head to what was Atlantis in the comics, but with Aquaman gone, it is now
Atlantis Untold.
what's it called? Talcoa?
It definitely
Hello?
begins with a T. I can't remember.
Oh,
I can't
I can't
remember.
believe
Yeah,
I can't believe
I
I got.
rely on you for this sort of stuff, buddy.
Yeah, but they don't. It's not. It's been completely rejigged for the film. So Namor is king of Atlantis in the comics.
Oh,
So
okay.
and
So
he's
maybe
definitely
that
not
they
of.
thought that would be a bit too silly. I don't.
I think they wanted to. Well, I guess the idea was Wakanda is very much about the effects of colonization, and
Yeah,
if one had not been, if a nation of Africa had not been colonized and they were sitting on this kind of precious metal and resources, what they could be today. And I think Namor's origin is very much in that same kind of element of
yeah.
I was forced into this because of the kind of colonization that happened to my family and
Yeah,
mum and all that
they
kind of
need
stuff.
both nations to have that similarity in order for the conflict to be, to have some catharsis to it or some emotion.
Yeah, and his anger stems from that place as well, which I think is really interesting. Even using his kind of nickname is Namor. He's not really. He's actually called Tulkukan, I think.
Yes,
Again,
yes,
I
that
think
sounds
that is a
right. That sounds
change from
right.
the comics. I might be wrong with that one,
Which is
but
this serpent god thing.
yeah, demon, child with no love, or something, or demon who had no love, or something like that. Which
Hmm.
again is a really interesting way for him to kind of take that on, because obviously he was very much loved. But yeah, I mean, we get to see an underwater world, and we get to see Marvel's take on it. Clearly, trying to do an opposite version of Aquaman, where not
Yeah.
as many
Well,
octopuses playing drums or anything like that,
although
but
although the wavy hair effects were kind of there, the Dolph Lundgren hair was kind of going on in this movie. I was thinking there is a very interesting sequence when you're first introduced to this underwater city. I am so mixed on how I felt about that scene. It kind of felt like I was watching Aquaman, and like the opening when you're introduced to the underwater city in Naboo in episode one. It kind of reminded me of that too. There was something very like magical and very something otherworldly and kind of sweet about seeing all these people kind of live their daily lives underwater, but also a kind of like, ooh, this janky CG, and it just looks like people swimming in a underwater tank. struggling to swim at 1 mile an hour, and then the action scenes they're all swimming about 50 miles an hour. It was kind of, there was a little bit of a continuity issue there for me. I know it's a Marvel movie, but I still, for that world to kind of really work for me, I don't know if it was fully conceptualized in a way that really kind of follows through.
I guess for me, I feel we've only seen a very small part of Talcoa, Atlantis. I don't
Yeah.
know. Let me Google it. I'm trying to Google it, but my internet is being so slow. What is it called?
If we're
Is
going
it
to
Tal?
mention it like several times, people deserve to hear it the proper way.
No, I know. So he's a Talcoan, right?
Hmm.
He's a mutant. That was interesting.
Oh, that flew over my head.
Talokan. Talokan.
Talocan.
Tal- Talocan. Talocan. Talocan.
Talocan. Talocan
Talocan.
sounds good. We'll go for
Let's
that.
call it Talocan. We'll go with Talocan. Yeah, you only see a very small part of Talocan. I think it's kind of shrouded in darkness to give it that kind of
Mm,
murky, hidden effect.
I
I
like
know
that.
some people. I liked it too. I know some people are saying probably just to hide the effects, which is probably a choice as well because
No, but I
um,
liked it. I thought it was very atmospheric and otherworldly to make it that kind of shadowy and dark. I like that.
and also that complete opposite to Wakanda. That when you see Wakanda for the first time, it's big and colorful and grand, and there's skyscrapers
Yes.
and flying spaceship jet things going everywhere. Um, and
You're
here, these
seeing you're
guys
seeing
are
a people who are prospering and a people who aren't, or forced to hide. They're prospering in their own
yes,
way, but they're forced to hide
prospering.
and not as and they can't live as vibrantly as the Wakandans. And there's an envy sort of principle in there. I like that.
Yes, yes, and obviously Namor in the film has kind of come out of hiding because there is a device that can find vibranium, and Talocan is full of
Hmm.
vibranium as well. Turns out there was not just one asteroid, potentially more that kind of went into the ocean, and I believe it's the
Yeah,
US are using that device to find the vibranium, and therefore getting a little too close to Talocan, and Namor wants the head of the scientists essentially. He wants
yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah, he wants that person dead so that they cannot make that device anymore. Um, I thought the scene where he comes out of the water, I believe it's the first time we see him, whilst Shuri and her mum, Queen Ramonda, are having a bit of a heart to heart. He comes out of the ocean and kind of confronts them in this. It's kind of like a semi-aggressive, but just semi like you got to
Yeah.
do this for me kind of thing. And I thought that was a really, really good scene. What did you think of kind of Namor's kind of first
Oh yeah,
moment on
like
screen?
he wasn't giving them an option, right? He was doing it in a polite way, but he was a threat. I thought the I guess you had a bit more of a expectation when seeing that character with the
Mm.
winged feet, obviously being a really strong visual attribute of
I can't
of
believe they did the winged feet.
Oh, yeah, and there's no shame in it, right? Yeah, I wasn't expecting it, but you know what? I kind of, from the conviction of the character, it kind of, it went down okay. It went down okay with me. But no, I find him quite threatening. I find him threatening because I think the way that actor Tenoch Huerta plays the character in a way that's almost sort of juvenile. I know that he's supposed to be like a 100-something-year-old being, but there's something juvenile and something kind of jaded about him. Like he's got a chip on his shoulder,
Mm.
like an angry teenager that kind of
Mm.
worked in the character's favor, that made him brash, made him violent, and made him scary, but also passionate about his people. And I thought that was a
I think that
really good character.
I think the main thing you said there was passionate, and I think that came across in a really great way. I thought he was one of the standout performances of the film. I honestly was so captivated by him. His discussions with Shuri when he is showing her around Talocan, and his
Hmm.
kind of reasoning behind, hiding his people, his reasoning behind wanting the scientists dead, as much as the science is dead is very much an extreme, and you know it's an extreme, you kind of like you feel where he's coming from because he's being so protective. And I don't know, like you said, there's just this element of like you can tell he's a strong leader, but yeah, there's an arrogance and there's this kind of blind sight to him where he can't think anything other than like the surface dwellers are evil and they've got to be kept away. And obviously Wakanda's going through a similar thing of like, should we have opened up to the world because we've got these issues and stuff like that. It's
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that element of it, and yeah, I thought he was an excellent villain. I thought, that's two for two now with Ryan Coogler and creating good Marvel villains because they are difficult. There's not been many great Marvel villains,
true.
I would say.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I would say the Killmonger, the Michael B. Jordan character is probably my favorite of the Marvel villains because again, going back to how that movie was so relevant the year it came out, and his character was really just a complete sort of mirror and reflection of what was going on politically, and there was real sort of anger that was visceral, and especially in those closing scenes where his character dies, man, that still hits every single time I watch that movie. And I think that's partly Michael B. Jordan, and just partly because it's just so well timed and well written. And yeah, and he's following the same sort of thread here. I wouldn't say that this character gets to the heights that Killmonger got to for me, but nevertheless, I did find him powerful. I think the movie for me just really suffers from having, like, we're talking about some really good moments in the movie, and I think that's what ultimately Wakanda Forever is for me. It is a series of good moments, kind of badly strung together. Has a very, I would say, it has a very baggy middle. I kind of noticed a lot of people even around me. I kind of like to gauge how an audience is receiving a movie, and I felt like a lot of people were getting tiresome with the middle part of the movie, and I kind of get it. It was really baggy, very exposition heavy. I know it needed to be to really establish what these guys were all about, but I don't know. The package just kind of got lost somewhere along the way. I thought there was really nice, inspiring ideas here, but yeah, some the I was missing the emotion actually. Obviously, take away the Chadwick Boseman stuff. The T'Challa stuff was really compelling when it was there, but the main plight of this nation, and sort of like I just wasn't bowled over by the emotion I was supposed to feel.
Okay, that's interesting. I disagree. Though I was pretty swept away, so I wasn't judging my audience at the time. I thought
Mm,
the middle act was probably the strongest act for me. I know there's some really
okay,
strong stuff at the start with Chadwick Boseman in kind of just like laying the groundwork, but I really loved like getting to know these characters, and I thought there was a lot of work done for Namor to understand him, and there was a lot of work done to understand Shuri and the place she's in right now. She's a
sure,
lot less,
yeah,
she's still got the funny and the fun and stuff like that, but there's a lot less of it than there was in the first film. She's had to go through so much grief now, losing her dad, losing her brother, and there's a maturity I think that she brings to the role. And I thought Letitia Wright absolutely nailed it in this film. She
yeah.
really does carry the film, as a she pretty much becomes the main character. And I think she was definitely channeling some of that regality that Chadwick Boseman had, but in a way of like I'm still trying to figure it out,
Oh,
and
of
I
course.
I just kind of everything in Talocan is
Yeah,
I loved everything with her interactions with Riri Williams, the scientist, who is Ironheart in the comics, and her
mm,
interactions with Namor, and then her interactions with Nakia when Nakia gets involved, and then having to witness the death of her mum, which was quite a shock. I didn't think anybody would die in this
yeah.
film. I thought there was so much death already involved that you really are putting your characters through the ringer, and kind of
I was
how
surprised by that
she
too.
takes on that grief and channels it into revenge. I
Yeah,
don't know. I really loved a lot of what was going on.
no, I get that. I mean, on a pen and paper sort of way, the Shuri stuff does work. she is a character who was, from an audience perspective, she was the scientist, comic relief, sort of quirky character of the original Black Panther movie. And suddenly now, not only is she dealing with the grief, she's also dealing with the weight of her kingdom on her that's suddenly being thrust upon her. Her mum, although dealing with it in her own way and her own regal way, she is a powerful woman. She has moments where she is not coping as well, and it is ultimately Shuri who's picking up the pieces. I love the stuff with Shuri and Okoye when they were kind of going on their own little adventures when they came across Riri. That stuff was really fun. I could watch that stuff for a long time, and maybe that was it because it had a little bit at the beginning of the film. I think it was missing a little bit of the. I didn't think I'd say it, but I think it was missing a little bit of Marvel's sprinkle of humor. For it there. And I thought I wouldn't be saying that coming off the back of Thor: Love and Thunder, but I understand why they did that and out of respect for Chadwick. But I don't feel like it would be disrespectful to still have the same DNA of a Marvel film in there. I don't know. Do you feel like that was kind of missing at
That's true.
times?
No, no, I don't think I did. I really enjoyed how serious they took everything that was going on. And there were sprinkles of comedy, and I think Black Panther did the same. It wasn't a flat out funny film. It was sprinkled with a few comedic elements. I actually didn't
Mm.
think a lot of them actually landed very well in Black Panther so much. And there are comedic elements here, but I don't think this needs to be funny. I think it's very much treated like an epic. It's very much treated like
But
a war film, or like the Cold War boiling over as as everything's all the grief, all the rage, all the anger is about to boil over and kind of destroy the planet in a way.
which I would love. I would love to have that double down on that seriousness, the somber tone. But apart from those moments where we're referring to T'Challa, I didn't feel them. I think there were some moments with Angela Bassett where she really just kind of tears the whole house down in terms of her acting
Mm.
ability. Some of those moments really catch you by surprise. But I feel like the main kind of plot thread of the movie kind of, I don't know, I felt numb. I didn't feel the dramatic heft, the extremes that were going on. I didn't get the tone that much, especially in the fighting scenes, which I feel like are some of the most forgettable fighting sequences in any Marvel film. Actually, I'm gonna go say, because I can't remember one piece of choreography or a shot from any of those fighting scenes. They don't feel like they were consequential to the plot or drove anything sort of forward. Yeah, they were kind of just ugly little messes. I don't know. I don't know how you felt about those, but it definitely
Well,
was something that I want from Black Panther movie, and it's just the thing with Marvel in general. I just feel like they really struggle in composing good action scenes, and that should be like the first thing Marvel should be good at.
yeah, that's true. Do you know what I do agree, because I like my biggest criticism is the third act is probably one of the worst. However, I when there's one-on-one action, you have Okoye versus the big kind of beastie warrior of Talocan. Thought that was good, and obviously Black Panther versus Namor at the end. Those
Yeah.
one-on-one action pieces, I think, are good. I think anything where it starts involving more people, it kind of gets a bit messy. And man, I would not have signed off on some of the designs near the end. I don't know about you, but the suit that they put Okoye in, the Ironheart suit,
Yeah,
just
yeah. It's
doesn't look great.
It looked like something from like an anime TV show, like My Hero Academia or something like that. It looked very like cosplay almost. Yeah, that's funny. That's something me and Lauren chatted about on the way home
I thought
afterwards. We kind of thought the costumes were a bit strange.
I thought Okoye's costume looked like a steampunk Kit Fisto.
Yes, Steampunk Mephisto, yeah, or a little bit like the fish man from Shape of Water as well. A little bit of that in there too.
Yeah, I did. I was just, and Okoye keeps making the joke that she finds it ugly, and I was thinking, like, yeah, it is. What's going on? And then Ironheart's suit is very, like, she is in the comics, she is the kind of legacy character to Iron Man, in the
Well,
same way that
she
Miles
does look like an
Morales was
'80s
to Spider
anime
Man.
character.
Right, she looks straight out of anime. Everything looked a bit too smooth. I think if you're going for that Iron Man look, You got
Yeah.
to make it a little bit more dented and a little bit more unpolished. But she has a TV show coming out next year, so I'm sure they'll do more there. But I
Yeah.
do think she was maybe a little bit shoehorned into this. I didn't think Riri Williams would. I mean, it's understandable. You need a scientist character. Why not make it this person and give an introduction to this person? But at the end of the day, I felt that she was maybe a bit of an afterthought to what was going on in the rest of the film.
She reminded me the way her character was dealt with in this reminded me so much of America Chavez in the new Doctor Strange movie, in terms of like someone who's there for the ride, but you're not really noticing, and not doing a lot to kind of really grab your attention. Maybe not the fault of the actors, but I think yeah, nothing really stood out by that character for me. As an introduction, I'm not really like, I'm not super like stoked for the TV spinoff. Um, yeah, she was a little bit lost on me.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. She was a bit lost on me as well. But I get it. You have the scientist character. You gotta, you have an opportunity to make it somebody that people know.
I,
Talking of
it's a
scientist
screenplay,
characters,
isn't it?
Lake Bell turns up for 5 minutes. That was strange.
I was so happy to see Lake Bell, because yeah, this is not her usual sort of gig, right?
That was such a
Yeah,
strange
I thought she was going to
five
end up being
minutes
in it
with
for
her.
longer.
Definitely,
I would
I
have
thought
loved to
so
see her
too.
as like a villain.
Yeah, I didn't really understand her potential demise. She was in the helicopter right as it was taken down, so
Yeah, oh
just
yeah,
kind
she was
of
blown to bits. She was blown to bits.
yeah, very interesting. I don't know. That was
That
that
was a
was odd.
great scene. That was a great scene in general. I think that was probably my
Yeah.
favorite scene in the movie, where we're introduced to what are they called as a tribe again?
So Talocan is the place, and then I guess they're
So
Talo t- t- Talocans,
Talukians or Talukans.
Talocanians.
Well, when we're first introduced to them in this like sort of really dark nighttime sequence, and they've got this sort of siren call that they're luring
mm,
all the handlers on board, and they're all luring them to the
so
death. That
good.
was so cool. I thought it was actually kind of spooky. The way the whole sound design was done in that whole scene with the siren call itself, I was really into that. It really kind of solidified how dangerous and angry these people are too, and I wanted to know more about them. So yeah, there was, again, it's moments that are really well done for this movie, and then there's like 10 minutes between those moments where I just don't really care kind of what's going on.
Yeah.
um I and I wouldn't say the movie, everybody's complaining, from what I heard, of people who don't like the movie, um are saying that the movie's too long. I actually didn't think, for somebody who was kind of lukewarm on the whole experience, I didn't think the movie was too long. Actually, it didn't feel like a lot of 2 hour 41 minute big blockbuster movies I have seen this year. um I did enjoy it. It just, there's just so many things that took me out. I just think I thought Ryan Coogler would have a better handle on the visual direction of the action. Um, and then I see scenes like the closing scene of this movie is so beautifully shot. It looks like an art house movie film or an A24 film. In the way it's got these beautiful, gorgeous close ups that I would expect from Coogler as a filmmaker. And you just wonder, like, are we still in this dilemma here now, where a director's vision on a Marvel film can only go so far, and ultimately it's the rest of the movie is up to the VFX team. It feels like that to me sometimes.
Maybe. I mean, I thought this was one of the better looking Marvel films. I think everything up to the third act looked pretty glorious. It's kind of shot with an epic scale to it. The medium close-ups are that kind of are the main kind of visual motif throughout the film, that allow for a lot of kind of emotion to be kind of read on the actors' faces. I thought I thought there was a lot of good stuff. The VFX near the end are clunky. There is no doubt. I mean, Black Panther suffers from that as well. It doesn't fully take
And
me out of the film. I do think
the
though that
copy and
Black
pasted crowds are back again.
oh the
And it's actually the same 5 people. They just literally right click and copy and paste up the hill, and it is a little bit distracting.
my eyes were too watery at the time. Everything was blurred.
That's
I didn't cover it.
again, maybe Marvel movies are not good to watch on an IMAX screen. When you watch a Marvel movie on an IMAX screen, all the little creases are there, and
Mm.
all of its wonder
I
to
mean,
see.
we've spoken about it. We know the VFX artists are kind of overworked at the moment, and I think that's starting to show. I didn't hit so much VFX in the early stuff, but yeah, near the end, I thought there was some pretty dodgy moments, but it never fully takes me because I think Black Panther has quite dodgy effects in that, but I really love that film. It is not enough to completely pull me out sometimes. I do think Black Panther himself or herself in this film is a really difficult character to get right for VFX because number one, it's a black suit, which doesn't always look good, when you're
Mm,
trying to computer generate something. And then second of all, you're supposed to be like an elegant panther. You there's nothing kind of there's no kind of human mistake, is there? You're even absorbing sound a lot of the time because you're very cat like. You're
mm.
moving like a cat. It's like a dance, and I think it falls into that uncanny valley of a character. I don't think it's a really difficult one to kind of visually get right. I think, even though it is just a person in a suit.
What other good points are there to talk about?
Music. I think Black Panther was
Yeah.
very good at this as well, but the musical motifs that they have um, for each kind of character or set of characters or clan or like the Dora Milaje, that kind of one of the opening scenes where an unnamed country is trying to steal some Wakandan research off of one of their kind of vessels, and they
Mm.
open this door, and out steps Okoye and the Dora Milaje, and that kind of oi, oi, oi.
Yes,
Maybe I
yes.
cut that out. You know what I mean?
No, no, that no, dude, that was pretty good actually. I know
Was
because
it?
that triggered the memory back there. No, that no, I loved all the tribal sound bites and music pieces are amazing. They propel the action scenes, don't they? Um,
Mm,
but yeah, it's unsurprising. Like I obviously have a big follow up from the first movie. The first movie had a kick ass soundtrack from Kendrick Lamar, and I know this kind of held its own compared to that movie. I don't know if it's as good, but it held its own and it used a lot of sound elements from that first film. I also really loved the credit song by Rihanna. I love that
mm,
song, that Lift Me Up. I was really impressed by that. It's not every day you get a really good like sort of credit song, and this was really kind of tasteful and something I would actually genuinely listen to. Yeah, I
mm.
was I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, the whole credit sequence I thought was really good. Even just the visuals and the text as they were coming up in the flames. Really kind of poignant moment. Did you put the
Yeah.
two and two together for that final credit scene that T'Challa would have a son?
Oh yeah, I mean that's oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it was pretty spelled out. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I,
said the same. I said the same to Emma. I was like, I'm pretty sure there's a couple of moments where,
do people not
um,
get that?
well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just wondering if you did. Ramonda at one point is saying to Shuri, "There's something I need to tell you about your brother," and she gets cut off, and then Nakia, who we haven't really spoken about much, but Lupita Nyong'o is excellent as always. She's really, really good.
Yeah.
But she's been in, I wouldn't say hiding, but in kind of, she's retreated away from Wakanda after the death of T'Challa, and is in Haiti.
Yes.
We then find out she's very vague on as to like, oh, I just couldn't be there, I was too upset, and is very vague about the reasons. And then obviously at the end you realize that she's been raising their son that she had with T'Challa. So a
Yeah.
promise
No.
of a
No. The had.
T'Challa to take the Black Panther mantle once more.
No, I thought Lupita was brilliant as always. I love her, like her. She had my favorite character design in this whole movie. I loved the long dreadlock hair. I thought their costumes were beautiful. The vibrant, beautiful dresses she was wearing for it. I was like, every time she was on her screen, I was kind of like, it was like eye candy. It was great to see her on screen. But yeah, no, she's somebody we've been sleeping on for quite a while. I still think like she's still not a household name, and she's just a terrific actress. I mean, she should really they should give her even more stuff to do in these Black Panther movies because she is so capable of gravitas.
Mm,
You can give her scenes just like Angela Bassett, and we'd be putty in her hands too. So no, I hope going forward we give her even more to do.
definitely, definitely. It's interesting. I'm still not 100% sure where they go next because it kind of felt like M'Baku was potentially going to become king. Uh, what is Shuri going to get up to now? So they've kind of left the door open for who kind of leads the franchise going forward. I think.
Well, I think there's still is it still open for Namor to be the villain again? You know,
Yeah, I mean, he
because
very much retreated, didn't he? Rather than is completely
yes,
his mind's not fully changed. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to go about this differently.
yes, he's still got the cloud of delusion over him, where I think the Wakandans thought that their situation was just like brushed over under the carpet now, and we're all good, and now he's like still like no, like yeah, they're just helping us.
Yeah,
So
he's like,
I
well,
think he
now,
got the wrong message.
well, I guess he's like, well, actually, they're powerful. I can use them as an ally. They're gonna at some point they're gonna have to come and come to us for help, which I assume is going to be the case. Because I don't think they're going to leave the U.S. government storyline hanging with
No.
with what's her name who pops up from Veep. I didn't like any of those scenes between Everett Ross, who plays Martin Freeman, and his who we now find out his ex-wife, who is
Oh,
director LaFontaine,
Julia
who's
Louise
popped up in a few
Dreyfus.
things. That's it. Yeah, do you know what, those scenes were so badly written. Like her introduction was so bad. It really felt tacked on. Um, yeah, I really didn't like
Yeah.
any of that. That's where you could have cut this film, I think.
No, no, 100%. Yeah, it didn't feel like it really kind of pushed the story anymore forward, other than to let us know that not all the US is bad. We've still got Martin Freeman, who has been shown kindness in the last movie. Um, yeah, that stuff was kind of it didn't really bother me too much because there wasn't a lot of it. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, occasionally I put the brakes on the movie, right? Um,
yeah,
and I wasn't very like interesting the content. I think it's kind of teasing her as a character, right? More than anything,
yeah, that's it. I think.
her future involvement. Because who's she again in terms of the scope of where the movie's going, where the
I
story's
can't
going?
fully remember, but it sounds like she's going to be heading up the Thunderbolts, which is Marvel's like Suicide Squad. So that's a film that's been confirmed, where you have
Right.
anti-hero slash bad guys, um, doing stuff for the government kind of thing. And there is a rumor
Oh,
going around that the Thunderbolt film that they're making is going to be about them going into Wakanda to try and steal vibranium.
okay. It sounds completely brand new, and I've never seen it before.
Yeah, yeah. These things tend to have uh,
It's poetry. It rhymes, right?
poetry. That's it. That's it. Like Shuri's origin story. In this film, she almost gets T'Challa's origin story from Civil War and Black Panther shoved into, 2.5 hours. Like you said, it's a long film. She kind of gets the same kind of emotional stuff to get through. But I mean, I enjoyed all that. I enjoyed the emotionally charged nature of this film and how they dealt with Chadwick Boseman's passing, how they introduced Namor, and the kind of political elements to it. I think the Black Panther series really is kind of the jewel in Marvel's crown at the moment. I think it's got like a 350 million pound opening weekend or something like this. Like this is the moneymaker now. Like, I think they
Mm.
need to see this probably.
Yeah, because the first movie was colossal when it first came out.
It
Um,
was
yeah,
huge.
yeah. I just feel like it was. I don't know. Out of all the Marvel movies, and even if I'm comparing it to Doctor Strange this year, which I was sort of lukewarm, a little slightly bit more positive than this, I could see myself watching that movie again. I don't know if I would stick on Wakanda Forever. Generally, I don't think it's a movie I'd be watching quite a lot. I don't. It just doesn't have that draw for me. I think it did what it needed to do, but I thought it was ultimately just a bit of a slog. I thought it was, yeah, it was baggy. It was baggy for me, and I felt it. And I came in I came into the movie looking forward to it, and I wanted to feel emotion. I wanted to be moved, and it's seldom connected for me. It did sporadically, but ultimately as a package, I feel like that's the problem here.
Fair enough. I did not feel those things. I really like. For me, it didn't feel baggy. It just felt like kind of epic. Like we're telling a big, sweeping story, um, and I don't know. Like it had that kind of grandiose nature to it that I think Infinity War had, and Infinity War
I
really won
wouldn't.
me over.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just told a very big story but from a very kind of personal place of
That's
grief.
so interesting. I didn't feel the epicness. I felt like it was a movie that was kind of 50% shot in rooms and felt like it had that. Maybe it didn't have it in this production, but it had that Disney volume esque feel to it. I don't know. I actually felt like this was oddly felt like an intimate movie. It's so weird how we came out with a really different feeling, and I watched it on the biggest screen possible. But I felt like it was small in a way that I felt disappointed by.
Yeah,
I,
see, that
I,
is very interesting.
hmm,
Intimate in emotion, but big on scale. I think that's the thing though, because Black Panther is not a superhero.
hmm.
It's a warrior mantle. It's not really, oh, I'm going around New York saving people like Spider Man. It's you're incorporating a story about a figure that incorporates a whole country. So it always usually ends up with war between this country and that country kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I think there's a grandioseness
I
to
also
that.
true, but I've also felt like Wakanda for a movie that's called Wakanda Forever. I felt like it lost its identity compared to the first movie in terms of its scope. I'm comparing side by side comparing the scenes where they're flying into Wakanda for the first time in both the movies. The first time I feel that movie, I'm listening to the music, the soundtrack, the transition into the city is beautiful, and it is actually it almost makes you choke up in your throat a little bit. And then when I
Mm.
watched this time, I felt like I kind of a subpar straight to video version of that. I felt like it didn't have the epic power that I had originally, and I feel like there's moments where we do replicate moments from the first movie that aren't done as well, and I couldn't help but thinking about that throughout this experience.
Okay, yeah. I mean, introduction to Wakanda, yes, but like lightning doesn't strike twice. You can't expect the same emotions. I don't think. Like for me, in that first film, I was the same as you. It really kind of was quite a big moment that kind of, what did you say? Like,
Well, sort of just the
just puts a lump in
majesty
your
and the
throat.
sort of
Yeah.
yeah,
For me, it was just seeing
and
Wakanda for
also
the first time. Like how cool
mm,
as a comic book fan.
it's interesting though we have different opinions. Usually we have Marvel movies in the past. We've been pretty like agreeable with each other.
Yeah.
We both hated Love. Well, I think I hated Love and Thunder. You disliked Love and Thunder. Um, Although I don't know, has that changed since then? Since that's like set for a couple of months now, do you like it more? Do you like it less?
I think I like it less. I've got no desire to go back to it at the moment. I don't know. I remember thinking like, oh, I had fun with it. It wasn't that bad. But then when you think like what it could have been, and then like what we've seen Taika Waititi do really good stuff, and it just didn't feel like maybe his heart was in that one. Whereas I think with Ryan Coogler, he had a lot on his hands here. I didn't envy his position at all to kind of juggle
Yeah.
so many pieces, and there was the pressure of how big Black Panther was, and there was the pressure of Chadwick Boseman's death and legacy and all this kind of stuff, and I think he handled it really really well, and just made like a really. I think Chadwick Boseman would have been proud of this film. He took the supporting cast, which is the strongest supporting cast in Marvel, and he transitioned them into really interesting main characters, and yeah, I mean, I don't think you could do that with every supporting cast of every Marvel film. Uh, Credit
That's
to
the thing.
him for kind of building that world to begin with. He's a great world builder, Ryan Coogler, I think.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And that's the thing. I feel almost like a villain here in terms of only being lukewarm to the film because yeah, I came out the first thing I said to Lauren, actually I turned over to her and said I really appreciated that experience. I do not envy what Ryan Coogler had to deal with, because he is juggling 100 balls here. It is really hard work he's doing here. But yeah, I'm sitting there watching it as a movie, and the experience didn't come completely together. And I'm thinking in my head, if we take the element of what real life elements that are reflected in this movie in terms of Chadwick Boseman's unfortunate passing, if what movie would we be left afterwards? And if we take separate myself from that social element, the movie is that's left is to me is a mediocre um, Marvel movie, and I kind of turned a bit subjective there when I was thinking about how I felt about the film and try to remove myself from the main conversation that was happening. But otherwise, it did have moments that really bowled me over. Yeah, I've never nearly teared up at the first 10 minutes of a Marvel movie, so it achieved something there for me. And
Yeah,
yeah,
easy
definitely
to do
worth
with
checking
this
out.
one, I think.
Oh yeah, it was easy, but no, but that's still earned. It's not like just like some
Yeah.
random guy, like they earned that because Boseman as an actor was so regal, just like the character of T'Challa, and the way he dealt with media in and out of the Marvel verse was so
Mm.
enviable, and I think he got so many people on his side during his really powerful yet unfortunately short career. So I think that's the shadow that leans over this movie, and yeah, I think so many people are so affected still by what happened. I think it's nearly 2 years now that he
Yeah.
passed away, and it feels just like yesterday. Especially when you're watching a movie like this, it feels like it just happened. So it reminds you of how raw that wound really was and
It
is.
was yeah, it
And
was such a shock.
oh yeah, and it's a void that you can't fill again. And I think that's the thing with this movie. Although it tries to really honor him and not replace at all, but hold a candle to him, it's a credit to Chadwick Boseman himself that the new Black Panther maybe cannot reach the height that he reached. I'll say that.
There you go. I take back my easy comment as well, because you know what? I all of a sudden I remembered that Rise of Skywalker had the same issue, and with Carrie Fisher when she passed, and they handled it atrociously. There was no emotion. Uh,
Yeah.
so do you know what?
Using stock
It's not an
footage
easy
and
feat.
lines. Isn't there like one scene where somebody comes up to um, General Leia and says, "Oh, we need you to do this thing. Can you help us or something?" And she just replies by saying, "No, never underestimate a droid." And it's got no place in that scene. It doesn't even reflect what the guy's saying. um, so yeah, no, this movie handled it a lot
Yeah.
better.
Though I will put my hands up, and from what I've read review wise and listened to review wise, I do think more people are kind of edging towards your opinion, Chris, of being
Okay, I haven't really listened to.
positive to mixed on it. And then you get some outliers like myself who really loved it and were really touched by
I haven't read any reviews, to be honest. I actually haven't listened or watched anything so far, so I just kind of went in kind of raw to it. But
I don't
yeah,
think anybody hates it, but it definitely feels very mixed to positive.
okay.
So not mixed to negative. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I loved it. I can't. I think it did such a great job. I think it's a little bit messy in the third act, and that does let it down a slight bit. Um, but yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
It
Big
needed
recommend from me, and good to see Marvel still has some creative juice in the tank.
100%. I think it needed to do that for you, especially because I think even you're such a big Marvel fan, and even conversations we've had on this podcast earlier this year with the previous two entries into phase four, I think you were getting pretty fatigued too. So
Mm.
it's nice that I know that you've got, because I know you love Marvel, buddy, and I know this is it's good for you to get reinvigorated and reinterested in it again. And if that movie did that for you, that's great. I'm still gonna turn up for each movie.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna wait. I'm still gonna wait for it to like have a like. I'm sure there is going to be a Marvel movie that comes on in the next couple of years that is going to like absolutely turn my world upside down. And I'm gonna throw fall head over heels for, but still waiting for it.
I know. I was thinking that I've not missed one Marvel film in the cinema, and I was thinking if each time I spent £5 or £10 on myself on a ticket, and then potentially £5 or £10
I don't.
on M's ticket, like how much money have I given to the Marvel machine? Then I've bought Blu-rays and DVDs,
Yeah, it
signed
could
up
be
to Disney
worse. You could
Plus.
be giving it.
I
You
don't
could
want
be
to
giving it
know.
to cigarette companies, or you'd be giving it to cigarette companies or alcohol companies. So at least it's a better addiction to have.
Feeding my man child.
That's it. That's it. And yeah, so that's how I felt about Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Alex really liked it. I was pretty mixed to positive. I didn't hate it. I had a pretty straight down the middle experience with it. But yeah, no, I think this is going to work for a lot of people. A lot of people are going to really enjoy this. I don't know. General audiences might find it too long. I feel like they might feel the bagginess there too. But
There's
no,
no
it'd be interesting.
bagginess.
There's no bag. Okay, sorry. Sorry. I have to replace the word baggy with epic. Sorry, I forgot. I forgot to say that.
Intimate epicness.
Okay, so there it is. I feel like we're getting back in the rhythm of this again, Alex. It's nice to be talking big movies like this, and and we're only going to get started because we're getting right into the beginning of what is going to be the pretty long Oscar season. So we're going to get a lot of these big movies coming out. So we're going to have lots to talk about. But for now, that's been the latest episode of The Film Angle. Please make sure to drop by and see us on Spotify, on Instagram, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you guys get your podcasts from. And please feel free to leave us a comment or a like, or tell us what we're doing wrong. It's kind of just interesting. I find the constructive criticism quite fascinating, but I might cry in my bed a little bit. But when I get over it, I will find ways to improve on myself and
We
and
always
tell
want
Alex
to
too.
improve.
I always want to improve. So yeah, that good does it for this week's episode of The Film Angle. My name is Chris.
And I'm Alex.
Goodbye.